Hey guys, my name is Kevin Carr. Today I want to talk about the importance of the programming language you choose for your project. So I've just been going through some reading through Code Complete Edition 2 or second edition. And in chapter 4, they talk a lot about how important the language you choose is. So they've done a couple studies, but two of the most prominent studies that they've done is one group or one study. There were two different groups of programmers. One group had 3 or more years of experience in a particular language, and another group of software engineers were new to the language. That study found that the more experienced programmers were 30% more effective than the programmers who were new to the language. In another study, the number was actually 3 times as productive. So someone who had extensive or expert level knowledge or capability in that language was 3 times as more productive as a new engineer to that language. So why is this important for your particular project, whether you're on a team or working by yourself, is one of the trade-offs or considerations that you're going to have to consider is what language do you program in best? What's going to be the most productive for your use case and time? So there might be a particular language that is best for maybe like your server-side logic. Maybe it provides better performance gains or more efficiency, but that might not be your best language. When you're first starting, maybe creating MVP, it makes more sense to program in the language you're best at. That's why one of the core tenets of, or like core benefits for like a full stack JavaScript application is if you're good at JavaScript, the whole stack is in JavaScript. Instead of having to know 2 languages on the client side and the server side, there's less switching in your mind logically because all these languages have slightly different syntaxes. You can think about the whole full stack development process. If you can do it in one language, especially if you're good at JavaScript, you'll be more effective and more efficient theoretically when you're building this project. Another aspect of this language performance, particularly choosing the right tool, because all coding and programming languages are tools. So some tools are better than others. One of the cognitive biases we have to avoid when we're building these software projects is using the wrong tool for the wrong situation. So like the old adage, when you have a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So every problem starts to look like a nail. But the cool thing about knowing multiple languages is that they have different use cases. So just to give you an example, let's say I just needed to write out a quick script. The immediate thought I have or tool I have in mind is Python. Let's say I want to build a website. I immediately think JavaScript. When I personally think of low level, high performant and fast code, I think about C and C++. So each language has its different use cases. Even an example like Scala, I know that's going to be good, especially for functional programming and also big data applications. Now, I'm going to share my screen right now, but I also wanted to show you kind of the difference between low level and high level programming languages. Okay, so particularly for this project and in Code Complete, they give you how performant a language could be productivity-wise in comparison to C. So if you think about if you had to code in assembly, it'd be quite difficult because every single line is a specific machine input. Now you have an abstraction over that low-level assembly language in C. It takes a lot of effort and memory management to write certain things in C. And when you start adding abstraction layers on top of the language. So C++ is basically a superset or extension of C, I believe, and it has object-oriented programming. So it makes it more easier to abstract and think about your code. And then you can kind of see this relative performance in comparison to C. So you don't have as much granularity or power over specific language features, but you can think about less things, right? You can think about more high value added things instead of having to think about the low level details. So that's why you see certain languages like Perl, Python, Smalltalk. I would even consider JavaScript in this table are 6 times as more effective than C in the speed of writing that code. So it doesn't mean it's more performant. It just means it's that you're able to be that much more productive depending on your language. And of course, there's other variables as well. This was on page 62 of the book, but it depends on your expertise. It depends on your particular project. So for example, if you're doing low-level embedded systems code, you would obviously, or more likely use C or C++. But for more websites or scripting, I would say Python, JavaScript. But you can kind of see the ease that you're able to get these productivity varies on how much abstraction is added into that language. So you're not having to worry about these low-level details. You can just focus on the high-value programming task at hand. So you can kind of see, again, C++, Java, 2.5 times more productive or more effective in terms of developer productivity in comparison to C. So there's less ceremony, there's less things you need to do, there's more hand-holding. But I'll just give you an example. One thing I remember from when I was starting Python is one of the examples they use is NASA for some of their scripts. They were writing in Java, right? So Java, I would say, is a slightly lower level language than Python. Python does more hand holding, does a lot more stuff under the hood that you don't have to worry about. So once they switched some projects over to Python, they were able to do a lot of things in a fifth as much code as they were in Java. So again, thought this was an interesting start to the chapter. The language you particularly choose for your project matters. So obviously with anything in software engineering, there's going to be trade-offs, but it as a general heuristic rule of thumb, go first by what language you're most comfortable to do the job in, and then go from trade-offs there. So, and especially if you're planning for your work on a specific sprint or cycle for your team, know if that a lot of these engineers are going to be learning a new language. You're going to be 30% less effective or 3 times as less effective because people have to engage in that learning curve. So I just thought this was really interesting, especially with software engineering. How you pick your tools and what tools you pick matter. As with anything in life and software, it's a trade-off. But it's really cool to see like these performance gains and the difference in productivity through these studies. So thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next video. Cheers.